Welcome, listeners, to another Mi Mind MashUps deep dive, where we unravel mysteries, spark curiosity, and make sense of complex ideas together.
Yeah, that's really what it's all about. Sparking curiosity, challenging assumptions, and, expanding our understanding.
Absolutely. And hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy content that makes you think.
Yeah.
So I want you to picture this for a second. You are traveling, maybe for work, and it is incredibly late. You step out of the elevator on, the 14th floor of some massive generic chain hotel. The doors slide shut behind you, and you turn around. Stretched out in front of you is a hallway that just seems to go on forever.
Oh, yeah, with that dizzying, repetitive geometric carpet pattern.
Exactly. And the fluorescent lights overhead are emitting this low, relentless buzzing sound.
Just that constant hum.
Right. And there's absolutely no one around. Not a single sound from behind any of the hundreds of identical doors.
Which logically means you're perfectly safe.
Right. The space is structurally sound, it's temperature controlled, well lit, and yet the hair on the back of your arm stands up. Your chest gets a little tight, you walk faster.
Because you just want to get to your room, lock the door, and get out of that hallway.
Yes. That visceral, inexplicable dread is the foundation of the massive internet phenomenon known as the Backrooms.
And it's wild because it is a universal response to a completely benign environment. Right now, that specific brand of architectural anxiety is just completely saturating the public conversation.
I mean, we've seen massive trailer drops recently.
Yeah, and with the official A24 movie release scheduled for May 29, 2026, the Backrooms has officially moved from a niche internet subculture to mainstream horror.
But to be clear, our mission for this deep dive is not to do movie coverage.
Right, no movie reviews today.
Yeah, we aren't here to break down trailer frames or analyze casting choices or anything like that. We want to extract the research behind why this concept works so perfectly. We're going to explore the profound psychology and the architectural theory behind the dread.
It's fascinating because we want to unpack how a physical space can feel profoundly haunted even when there isn't a single ghost or monster in sight.
So how do empty hallways basically weaponize our own brains against us?
Well, to understand the mechanics of that weaponization, we should probably touch on the timeline really quickly, though we won't dwell on it.
Yeah, let's get into the origin story.
The origin is incredibly organic. It didn't start as some Hollywood studio pitch. It actually started in May 2019 as a simple, eerie image posted on a 4chan paranormal board.
Just a single picture.
Yeah, someone just posted a photograph of a completely empty, mildly depressing office space. It had that dim, yellow patterned wallpaper, damp-looking monochromatic carpet, and harsh fluorescent lighting.
And from that one single image, a massive collaborative internet myth was born.
Exactly.
The community started attaching the concept of no clipping to the photo.
Which is such a great concept.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't played video games from the 90s, no clipping is basically a glitch where your character falls through a solid wall and drops out of the boundaries of the map into a void.
Right, you just glitch out of reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the myth became, well, what if you could no clip out of the real world?
Oh, wow, yeah.
You wouldn't fall into a black void. You would fall into this endless, maddening maze of yellow backspaces.
But the crucial pivot, the thing that really evolved it, happened when creator Kane Parsons took that static image and built a navigable universe out of it.
Using found footage videos, right?
Yes. He made it look like actual people were walking through it, filming the endless yellow rooms on old VHS cameras.
I remember seeing those. It really feels like the difference between looking at a spooky photograph and being dropped into a virtual reality simulation.
Absolutely. That transition from a static JPEG to a physical moving environment is where the psychology really locks in.
Because you aren't just an observer anymore.
Exactly. When it was just an image, you were an observer looking at a weird piece of art. But once Kane Parsons made it a navigable system, with corners to turn and hallways to run down, you became a participant.
So by making it a physical, navigable system, didn't that fundamentally change the type of fear we experience? We moved from a quick internet meme to full-blown environmental horror.
It totally did. And the reason that environmental horror feels so potent brings us to a foundational anthropological concept called liminality.
Liminal spaces. That's a term that gets thrown around a lot online to describe, any weirdly empty room.
It does, but in anthropology, liminality has a very specific definition.
What is the actual definition then?
Well, liminality refers to a threshold state. It's the ambiguous in-between phase phase of transition where someone or something has left one condition but hasn't fully integrated into the next.
Okay, so like an in-between phase.
Right. Anthropologists originally used it to describe rites of passage, but when you apply that threshold logic to architecture, it maps beautifully onto spaces designed purely for passage, not for dwelling.
So we are talking about airport connectors, mall corridors, hotel service wings.
Windowless stairwells, locker room passages, all of that.
Basically, places you go through, never places you go to. Like nobody hangs out in the connector tunnel between Terminal A and Terminal B.
Exactly. Because these spaces are designed for transit, they are inherently temporary. And normally, these liminal spaces come equipped with what environmental psychologists call a human script.
The human script, what does that mean?
It's a subconscious set of expectations your brain constantly runs when you enter a room. For an airport corridor, the script includes the rolling of suitcase wheels, the murmur of announcements, a sense of hurried purpose.
And the physical presence of other bodies, I imagine.
Yes, and crucially, an implied exit. You tolerate the sterile environment because your brain knows it leads to a gate.
So the Backrooms essentially strips away that human script.
Completely.
It takes the temporary transitional state of a liminal space and makes it permanent. It creates this purgatory built entirely out of cheap carpet and buzzing lights.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It reminds me of an empty school stairwell during summer vacation.
Oh yeah, that's a classic example.
Like if you ever had to go back to your high school in the middle of July, walking down those halls is an incredibly jarring experience. The silence feels heavy. It just feels wrong.
It really does.
But wait, if the space is empty and quiet, shouldn't it feel peaceful? If I'm in a space that is objectively safe, well lit, free of obvious threats, why does the brain experience expectation failure, ambiguity, and loss of orientation instead of a Zen moment?
Well, it comes down to intent. Think about a sensory deprivation tank. People pay good money to float in those to relax.
Right, which is basically a dark void.
Exactly. But a sensory deprivation tank is an intentional, featureless void. The brain understands it as a null space.
Okay, so how is an empty school hallway different?
An empty school hallway, or the back rooms, is not a void. It's a massive contradiction. Your brain does not perceive physical places simply as neutral geometry.
Because we are highly social primates.
Yes, our spatial processing networks evolved to read environments as social habitats. Your mind has a very specific, deeply ingrained file for a school hallway.
And that file expects the ringing of bells, the scuff of sneakers, lockers slamming.
The active routine of hundreds of people, right?
So the architecture itself implies the presence of the crowd.
Precisely. The wide walkways exist to facilitate flow. The banks of lockers imply ownership and transaction. When all those expected traces are entirely removed, the brain doesn't register the space as peaceful.
What does it register it as?
It registers a catastrophic software error. It's loading the busy school program, but the sensory input is returning 0 results.
Oh wow, that creates a profound dissonance.
It does. Your brain knows what should be there, and its absence triggers an evolutionary alarm. If the tribe is gone from the gathering place, something must have chased them away.
So you are basically waiting for the other shoe to drop. But the environment never gives you the release of a resolution. It's just endless anticipation.
Right. And speaking of anticipation, let's look at the concrete science behind this.
Hey, by the way, real quick, if this is resonating, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive. Okay, sorry, go ahead with the science.
No, definitely subscribe. But yeah, we aren't just dealing with abstract philosophy here. There is rigorous, peer-reviewed research analyzing this exact architectural dread. A fascinating 2022 paper published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology looked at how physical places can trigger an uncanny valley response.
The uncanny valley. We usually apply the uncanny valley to human faces.
Right, exactly.
Like when you watch a movie that uses CGI to de-age an actor, or you look at a highly advanced humanoid robot, it might look 99% human, but the eyes are just slightly dead.
Or micro-expressions are just off.
Yeah, our brain instantly rejects it, screaming that this is a corpse or a predator mimicking a human. Our threat detection systems go haywire. Are you saying our brains do the exact same thing with drywall and carpeting? Like, we don't view empty spaces as neutral geometry, we view them as broken social environments.
Yes. The mechanism is incredibly similar, which is a massive breakthrough in how we understand spatial psychology.
That is so wild to think about.
The researchers found that environments trigger an uncanny valley revulsion when subtle structural deviations make them feel almost normal, but fundamentally flawed.
And this is the strongest anchor for why the Backrooms aesthetic is so deeply terrifying, isn't it?
Exactly. The Backrooms is not scary because it's wildly alien. It's not a landscape of bones and slime, and it's not a dark cavern filled with literal monsters.
It's terrifying because it is aggressively near familiar.
The geometry is entirely plausible.
I mean, every listener has stood in a room with that exact drop ceiling and that exact baseboard mold.
It is entirely recognizable, but the endless repetition, the total emptiness, and the subtle structural wrongness just break the brain's spatial mapping system.
Like walls meeting at weird angles.
Yeah, non-Euclidean angles. Or thick concrete pillars placed directly in the middle of a narrow hallway, serving absolutely no load-bearing purpose.
Or doorways that just open into blank walls.
Exactly. These structural errors make the environment impossible for the brain to categorize.
It's what we call category failure. Like, a chair is for sitting, a door is for entering.
Right.
When you encounter a room with no doors, chaotic pillars, and endless repeating corners, the brain just loops. It tries to file the space under office building or waiting room, but the physical reality rejects that filing.
And that category failure directly feeds a psychological state known as threat ambiguity.
Threat ambiguity, like not knowing what the danger actually is.
Yes. In evolutionary terms, if you're walking through a jungle, your brain is actively scanning for a tiger, the threat is clear, and your focal point is established.
But in the back rooms.
Because you cannot categorize the space, you cannot categorize the potential threats within it.
Right.
You don't know where a predator might hide, you don't know where the exits are, and you don't understand the rules of the environment.
So your amygdala just spikes your adrenaline, creating hypervigilance, but you have absolutely no target for that vigilance.
Exactly. The jungle isn't hiding the tiger, the jungle is the tiger.
Oh wow, that perfectly explains the physical exhaustion people feel when they navigate these spaces, even in virtual reality or a video game.
Your brain is running its threat detection algorithms at 100% capacity with zero resolution.
So let's dig into the specific visual aesthetic of the Backrooms.
Sure.
Because it isn't just an empty, structurally flawed room. It is very specifically characterized by this mono-yellow, beige, slightly damp 1990s corporate aesthetic.
It is very specific, yes.
It feels incredibly nostalgic, but not in a good way. It feels like a memory you didn't know you had.
The specific color palette and texture are crucial here. They tap into how human memory and environmental nostalgia actually function.
How so?
Well, the yellow-beige walls and the damp industrial carpet evoke half-remembered public interiors from our childhoods.
Oh, right. Spaces we occupied passively while the adults were doing things.
Exactly. We are talking about old tax offices you sat in with your parents, municipal annex buildings, dentist waiting rooms.
Fast budget furniture stores, local recreation centers built in the late 80s.
It's the background scenery of our lives, the mundane, utilitarian architecture we stared at while waiting for time to pass.
And that shared architectural language gives the Backrooms a massive collective nostalgia layer.
But as you noted, it isn't the warm, fuzzy nostalgia we usually seek out. It is a phenomenon we can call decayed familiarity.
Decayed familiarity, I like that term.
It feels like a place you've been before, but only in fragmented, disjointed pieces, almost like a fever dream you can't quite piece together.
And that partial recognition is emotionally potent because it forces two highly contrasting feelings to collide, right?
Yes. Comfort and alarm.
You feel the comfort of familiar childhood materials like the acoustic ceiling tiles, the specific weave of the carpet.
But it's mixed violently with the alarm of the endless, unnatural, labyrinthine context.
The clash between the mundane and the infinite.
Jackson.
And this points toward a much broader, deeply modern type of fear. Like, we aren't talking about folklore here.
No, not at all.
We aren't talking about vampires or werewolves or the fear of the dark woods. We are talking about an intense dread of the very systems we've built for ourselves.
This is perhaps the most vital framework for understanding why the Backrooms resonates globally. It is the ultimate expression of system horror.
System horror.
Yeah.
Break down the mechanics of that for us.
Sure. In traditional horror, the fear is an external anomaly, right? Like a ghost invading a house or an alien attacking a ship.
Right.
In system horror, the primary fear is the environment itself. It's the realization that the room belongs to a massive, human-built system that has completely decoupled from human needs.
It represents a runaway machine.
Exactly. The Backrooms is terrifying because it is bureaucracy without purpose. It's commercial retail space without customers. It's administrative design without a destination.
Bureaucracy without purpose. That hits right at the core of the modern condition. It perfectly mirrors the existential dread we feel when we scroll through photo galleries of dead, abandoned shopping malls.
Oh, for sure.
Or when we drive past sprawling, forgotten suburban office parks in the 1990s. Those massive structures were built strictly for capital, for commerce, and for extreme human density.
And when the commerce dries up and the humans leave, the shell that remains is deeply unsettling.
It highlights how artificial and ultimately fragile our societal systems are. We build these massive, unnatural grids, and when they empty out, they look like alien artifacts.
And the scariest part of the Backrooms is that the system hasn't just been abandoned. It appears to be operating on an indifferent autopilot.
Right. The fluorescent lights are still buzzing.
The carpets are still damp, so you have to ask, who is generating the electricity? Who built the walls?
The implied presence of a caretaker system.
Yes, a massive unseen infrastructure that is maintaining these endless rooms, but is completely indifferent to your existence. That is what solidifies system horror.
Because it strips away your autonomy. You are completely insignificant, just a glitch in a machine that doesn't even know you're there.
Exactly.
So the ultimate nightmare isn't falling out of reality and landing in a chaotic hellscape. The nightmare is falling out of reality and landing in the infinite basement of an accounting firm in 1997.
That's spot on.
The Backrooms is terrifying because it takes the transition spaces we endure every day and turns them into a place you can never leave. Like, we are conditioned to tolerate the sterile, soul-crushing design of a waiting room or a windowless hallway because we know it's temporary.
We accept the bad lighting and the ugly carpet because we're just passing through.
But the Backrooms removes the exit door. It traps you in an environment that was never designed for human comfort, survival, or joy. It was designed purely for administrative efficiency.
It's a profound reflection of our innate psychological need for purpose, destination, and social context in our physical environments. When you remove the destination, the transit space literally becomes a prison.
It fundamentally changes how you look at the world around you.
It really does.
So the next time you find yourself walking through a quiet waiting room, or maybe you are the last one leaving your building and you have to walk down a deserted, windowless administrative corridor to get to the parking garage, take a second.
Just observe how you feel.
Right. Pay attention to what your brain is actively expecting to hear and see. Notice the slight, involuntary spike in your heart rate when those acoustic and visual expectations aren't met.
Feel how the geometry of the architecture itself makes you feel when the human script goes completely quiet.
It is a wild realization to understand that your brain is constantly, actively interpreting the drywall and carpeting around you as a social contract.
Once you understand the mechanisms of liminality and system horror, you really start to see those hidden scripts and uncanny valleys everywhere. You can't walk through an empty airport terminal the same way again.
You really can't. And that leads to a final lingering question I want to leave you with.
Let's hear it.
We spent this entire deep dive talking about how the current Backrooms aesthetic, the yellow wallpaper, the damp beige carpet, the drop ceilings, is rooted in the commercial sameness of the late 20th century. It targets the decayed familiarity of millennials and Gen Z.
Right, the 90s corporate look.
But if the ultimate modern dread is tied to abandoned commercial sameness and endless bureaucracy, what does that say about the environments we are building right now?
Oh, that's a great point.
Think about the spaces we consider modern and efficient today. 50 years from now, when our current architecture becomes completely outdated, will the sleek, minimalist, open-plan tech offices become the new nightmare?
Will they be the new Backrooms?
Exactly. Will the massive, windowless, highly automated e-commerce fulfillment centers we are currently designing become the new Backrooms for the next generation? Will our grandchildren be terrified by virtual mazes of polished concrete, standing desks, exposed ventilation pipes, and perfectly diffused LED lighting?
It's entirely possible.
Next time you step out of an elevator into a long, perfectly quiet, endlessly repeating hotel hallway, you might just want to walk a little faster.
I know I will.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to hear more My Mind MashUps deep dives.
Yeah, drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective could really shape our next deep dive.
And find My Mind MashUps everywhere you listen: Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, TikTok, and YouTube. See you next time.